Law school admissions this cycle is shaping up to be a mess. Not because schools are evil or because the system is broken, although you can make that case. It's because everything is shifting at the same time. More applicants, more LSAT retakes, more uncertainty, and more pressure. So whether you're a splitter, a non-traditional applicant, a KJD prelaw major who thinks, I got this, you don't. This is not the year to play it cool. This is the year to get laser focused. And the most important piece of the puzzle, the one that gives you actual leverage, is the LSAT. So let's stop pretending the LSAT is just one factor among many. Yes, law schools like to say they're holistic in admissions, and yes, they say they care about your personal statement and your letters of rec, and those things do matter, but to be honest, it's the LSAT that is the gatekeeper. Everything else is just decoration. I mean, think about it from the law school's perspective. They've got to hit their LSAT medians in order to climb the US News rankings. Higher rankings means more prestige, more applicants, more money. So if you walk in with a 175, you're basically handing them a free upgrade. And if you show up with a 159, now they've got to explain you to the dean. That's why admissions will bend over backwards to explain away a weak GPA, but they will not do the same for a weak LSAT. Now here's where most applicants mess up. They will spend weeks writing a why our school essay that no one asked for. They'll agonize over whether their resume should include their high school debate team, and they'll build color-coded spreadsheets tracking every single application deadline. Meanwhile, they're still scoring in the 160s. So let me be very clear. If your LSAT isn't where it needs to be, none of that other stuff matters. You could have glowing recs from Michelle Obama and Ruth Bader Ginsburg's ghost. It's not going to save you. We don't even let our students start their applications until their LSAT is at or near the target. Otherwise, they're just decorating a house that hasn't been built yet. And before you say, I'm just not a good test taker, let me stop you right there. The LSAT is not about test-taking talent. It's about pattern recognition, time discipline, and mindset. You don't need to be a genius, you just need a system. You need a way to study that actually helps you improve, not just spin your wheels. So first, let's ask, have you hit your target score? Not once on a fluke when the stars aligned, I mean consistently under test day conditions. Ask, do you actually understand your mistakes? Or are you just reading the questions and hoping for the best? And is your LSAT prep making you feel more confident or more frantic? And be honest here, if you're burning through 80 question marathons and getting nowhere, it's time to make a change. Bottom line, the LSAT is not just another hoop to jump through. It is the biggest lever you have. You get that number where it needs to be, and suddenly schools that were reaches become real possibilities, and scholarships start showing up. Doors open to you. But if you ignore the LSAT, all those beautifully polished essays and resumes are just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. So before you tweak a single word of your personal statement, fix the one thing that actually moves the needle. Now let's talk about the shifts that are happening in law school admissions this year and why pretending it's just another cycle is a huge mistake. This cycle isn't just more competitive, it's more chaotic. If you're applying this year, here's what you're walking into. First, we are going to have way more applicants. The LSAT flex era from the pandemic is technically over, but the aftershocks are not. We are seeing a massive surge in applicants. People who sat out last year, they're back. People reapplying, more of them this time. And people are applying to more schools than ever. You are not just competing with your classmates, you are competing with everyone. Another big factor is there are more applications per person. Thanks to streamlined platforms like LSAC's Credential Assembly Service, many applicants are applying to 10, 15, even 20 schools. And why not? It's a simple numbers game. If you're betting on yourself, you spread your chips. But this leads directly to the next problem, which is going to be slower decisions. Admissions just cannot keep up with the influx of applications. They've got more files, more emails, more people asking them, when will I hear back? And a process that used to take weeks is now dragging on for months. So what does that mean for you? It means your application will probably be reviewed by someone who's overwhelmed, overtired, and moving fast. They're not looking to fall in love, they are looking to triage. You have just 30 seconds to make a good impression, or you're getting skimmed into the maybe later pile, aka the wait list. And this is the part where most applicants blow it. They assume the reader is going to carefully study their application like it's a legal brief. Nope, they're going to skim it. They're speed reading. They are looking for red flags. And here's what happens if your application creates friction. If you've got weird formatting, that's a red flag. Typos, red flag. Vague philosophical essay that sounds like it was written by ChatGPT, that is a big red flag. A resume that still includes babysitting your neighbor's cat back in 2018, automatic ding. Your goal is simple. Remove every single point of friction. Don't confuse the reader. Don't make them guess what your story is. Don't make them scroll through 5 different pages to find your GPA. Make your application so clear and so easy to follow that they have no choice but to move you forward. And when we coach our students through this process, we literally read their essays out loud, pretending we are board admissions officers. And if it doesn't pass the skimmability test, it gets fixed. Now let's address a common myth. It doesn't matter when you apply as long as it's before the deadline, right? Wrong. Applying early still gives you an edge, not because of some magical early bird bonus, but because early readers still have patience. They're more open to nuance, and they haven't read 700 essays yet that week. They're not burnt out on hearing the same story 15 different ways. So yes, apply early if you can. Not just because it's strategic, but because it gives your application the best possible chance to be read by a human being who's still functioning on caffeine and optimism, not despair and deadline panic. Now let's kill a myth real quick. You've probably heard people say, doesn't matter when you apply, as long as it's before the deadline. That is so wrong. Here's the truth. Applying early gives you a real advantage, just not the magical one people think it does. Let me explain. It's not about there being some kind of early decision boost. It's about application reader psychology. Admissions doesn't have some giant bucket labeled early applicants that automatically gets you bonus points. But what they do have is overworked staff reviewing hundreds of files under insane pressure. And early in the cycle, say September through November, those readers are fresher, more thoughtful, more willing to take the time with your materials, and less jaded by reading their 500th personal statement. In other words, you get a better shot at being understood. Your story gets a little more attention, the nuance gets noticed, and your GPA gets context, not side-eye. But later in the cycle, it's a totally different ballgame. At that point, they're swamped, they're tired, they've read everything. And at that point, they're not thinking, how can I advocate for this applicant? They're thinking, do I have to advocate for this applicant? And that shift in energy is real. I've talked to admissions officers. It's not some conspiracy theory, it's just human nature. So when you apply early, it's not about jumping the line. It's about giving yourself access to the most generous version of the process. Now, before you rush off and hit submit today, let me be clear. Early doesn't mean sloppy. There is a big difference between strategic early and panicked early. Strategic early means you've hit your target LSAT score. You've reviewed your personal statement with someone who knows what they're doing. You've confirmed that every essay answers the question actually being asked. You've proofread every sentence like you're submitting it to the Supreme Court. In contrast, panicked early means I'm still at a 160, but I'll retake it later. Or my personal statement's kind of vague, but I ran out of time. Or I heard it's better to apply early, so I just hit submit. Now, we never let our students submit early just for the sake of being early. The quality has to match the timing, otherwise it's going to backfire. So yes, applying early helps, but only if your application's strong enough to take advantage of it. Now, if you're serious about applying to law school this cycle, your ideal timeline would have you finalizing the LSAT no later than November. It would have you finishing up your essays no later than November. And sometime between now and November, you are hitting submit to all your top choice schools. And by January, you are 100% done while everybody else is still scrambling. Notice what's missing? No last minute retake in February. No editing while you're hitting submit. No praying for a waitlist miracle in April. And this is how you get offers while your competition is still refreshing their status checkers. Bottom line, early matters. Not because schools are rewarding punctuality, but because the humans reading your application are still capable of caring. So take advantage of that. Now let's say you walk into a room full of law school applicants and announce, I got a 173 on the LSAT. In 2015, you get applause, a standing ovation, and someone offers to carry your books for you. In 2025, a few people nod politely because so did they. This year, high scores are more common than ever. There are more retakers, more access to high-quality prep materials, and more people taking the LSAT seriously from day one. So if you are a so-called splitter, someone with a high LSAT and a lower GPA, and you think your score is going to carry your entire application across the finish line, I've got some bad news. You are not a unicorn anymore. You are a zebra in a whole herd full of zebras. Now, of course, law schools care about LSAT scores, and they always will. But they also care about GPA medians. And this year, with so many strong applicants flooding the pool, they can afford to be picky. So let me translate what this means for you. A 3.3 GPA and a 173 LSAT used to be impressive. Now, it just raises questions. Has this person grown since college? Or is this a fluke? Or are they actually ready for law school? The burden is on you to answer those questions. Now let's talk about how to defend a low GPA. First, what doesn't work? What doesn't work is blaming professors, saying you were too busy with extracurriculars, saying you didn't really care about school back then, or trauma dumping in hopes of gaining sympathy. In contrast, here's what does work. First, time, the great healer of all wounds. If it has been a few years since you graduated and you've done something meaningful since, like you've worked, built up a skill set, shown maturity, schools are more likely to view your LSAT as a better indicator of your current abilities. Taking accountability always wins. If you can own what happened, if you can be honest and show how you've changed and what you've done to make sure it doesn't happen again. Finally, if you can provide proof, if you can point to concrete evidence showing that you're ready. That could be your job performance, academic work you've done since graduating, or the sheer consistency of your LSAT performance. And when we help students in this position, we treat the GPA like an open wound. We clean it, we cover it, and we show it's healing. No excuses, no guilt trips, just showing growth. Now, the students who are winning this application cycle, especially the ones with GPA issues, are the ones who combine a high LSAT score with reflection and maturity. They'll say, quote, I struggled in college, here's why, but here's what I've done since and why I'm ready now. They don't try to hide their transcript behind a high LSAT like it's some kind of force field. They use their LSAT to open the door and then walk in that door with a story that shows growth. Because here's the truth. Law schools are not just admitting numbers, they're admitting people. And if your numbers don't match up, you better show them who you've become since. Now let's talk about something most applicants completely miss. It's not your LSAT or your GPA or your resume or your letters of rec, it's your tone. Admissions is not just asking, is this person smart enough to succeed in law school? They are asking, will this person be a problem? And I don't mean problem as in challenging the system or thinking differently. I mean problem as in difficult, disruptive, exhausting, arrogant, or performative. That's the quiet culture shift happening in admissions right now. And most people applying this year don't even see it. There is a new kind of personal statement that's showing up more and more. It sounds like this, quote, I've always been passionate about justice. The legal system is broken. I plan to dismantle the inequities and build a new system for the people. Okay, cool. Now, who are you again? When your essay reads like a Twitter thread, you come across as someone trying to win a debate, not someone trying to learn the law. And here's what makes this so tricky. Your intent might be genuine, your experiences might be real, but your tone reads as performative. This is especially true when your entire essay is theoretical with no personal connection, and you drop phrases like legal industrial complex with no explanation. And you write as if your audience is your activist group, not a 60-year-old professor who teaches contracts. Law schools are actually looking for people who can think critically, handle disagreement, learn from those they don't agree with, and engage in nuanced conversations without flipping over the table. In other words, emotional intelligence. You don't have to agree with the system, you don't have to hide your values, but you do have to show that you're capable of operating in complex environments without making everything about you. And when we help students with their essays, we look at tone as much as content, because we've seen applications get derailed by essays that sounded more like manifestos than reflections. Now, let's say you care deeply about injustice, and you have worked in social impact or advocacy, and you do want to use your degree for good. That's great, so let's show it. But instead of preaching, try this. Share a moment where your beliefs were tested. Talk about something that challenged your assumptions, and show what you learned, not just what you believe. Admissions is tired of declarations. What they want are stories. Not, I care about justice, but here's a time where I saw injustice up close, and here's how it changed the way I think about the law. One's a bumper sticker, the other's a person. Guess which one gets in? So here's what wins in 2025. Saying, quote, I'm thoughtful, grounded, intellectually curious, and ready to learn. I don't have all the answers, but I'm serious about asking the right questions. That's who law schools want. Not somebody who rolls into the building like they're already Chief Justice. Bottom line, your tone tells a story before your words even land. So slow down, stay grounded, tell the truth, and trust that real reflective insight will always beat shallow outrage. Now let's talk about essay topics. You know, the thing that everybody thinks is easy because I'll just write about what I'm passionate about, until they sit down to write and realize that they've already written the same thing as 400 other applicants. And now their application reads like a mix between a college freshman blog post and an MSNBC headline. Here's the truth. There are certain topics that, in any other setting, might sound thoughtful or passionate, but in admissions, they're red flags. Why? Because they're tired, they're cliche, and more importantly, they usually say more about what you think the reader wants to hear than who you actually are. Now, let me give you the top offenders for this year. If you're writing about any of these in 2025, consider this your polite but firm nudge to rethink. How AI will change the legal profession. The 2024 election taught me the importance of democracy. Ever since I was a child, I've known I was destined to practice law. I watched Suits and fell in love with the law. The criminal justice system is broken, and I plan to fix it. And look, it's not as if these topics are inherently bad, but the way people write about them is generic. There's no voice, no personal insights, no specifics, just a lot of vague idealism with nothing to back it up. So before you commit to an essay topic, ask yourself 3 questions. First, is this rooted in my actual experience, or am I just echoing a headline I read last week? Am I saying something new, or just agreeing with what everybody already believes? And finally, would someone who disagrees with me still be willing to listen to what I've written? When we work with our students on their essays, these are the filters we use. A good topic makes your application stand out. A bad one makes it disappear. Now, here are some topics that actually work because they're about you. Some of the best essays we've seen this year were about things like quitting a job that no longer aligned with your values, navigating a family disagreement that changed how you think about persuasion, wrestling with a moral dilemma in a totally non-law setting, like customer service, discovering that you were wrong about something and then growing from it. So these kinds of essays work because they're not trying to win points. They're just honest. They show reflection, maturity, complexity, voice. They sound like someone you'd actually want to sit next to in class. Bottom line, if your essay topic is only interesting because it's big, it's probably not working. If your topic is specific, grounded, and personal, it's gold. Admissions officers are tired. They've seen everything. So give them something real. Skip the headlines and tell your story. Now, after all this talk about what not to do, let me show you what actually works. There's one kind of essay that's quietly dominating this cycle, and it's not saying, my life was hard, and now I want to be a lawyer. That one's been done to death. Here's how the new essay goes. You say, I used to believe X, Then something challenged that belief. I struggled with it. Eventually, I came to believe why. That process, that growth, is what led me to law school. It's like an intellectual autobiography. There's no dramatic courtroom moment, no childhood dream of arguing before the Supreme Court, just an honest evolution of thought. And it works really well. Because it shows law schools exactly what they want to see in 2025. Intellectual humility, capacity for growth, curiosity, and a track record of engaging with complex ideas and not running away. This shows depth, not just ambition. I mean, anybody can say they want to help people, but when you walk someone through how your beliefs changed and why, that tells them you're not just driven, you're self-aware. It also avoids cliches. There's no big dramatic aha moment, no inspirational quotes, just you thinking, struggling, and growing, and that is way more compelling. This also positions you as being teachable. Law schools don't want someone who thinks they already know everything. They want someone who's ready to be challenged and has a history of responding well when they are. Now, we often ask our students, what is a belief or assumption you held that you no longer do? And that one question has led to some of the most powerful personal statements we've ever seen. So here's how to build your own intellectual autobiography. First, start with a belief you held strongly. It could be about justice, leadership, fairness, identity, anything that mattered to you. Then, describe what challenged that belief. It could be a class, a conversation, or an experience that didn't fit your worldview. Then, walk through the tension. What did you wrestle with? What made you question things? Then, explain how you evolved. Where'd you land? What shifted and why? And finally, connect it to your decision to pursue law. Not with a cliche, but with insight. Something like, quote, that experience made me realize how powerful the law is in shaping outcomes, and how little I understood it. That gap is what drew me in. Now here are some actual essay arcs we've seen work well this year. We worked with a student who used to think free speech meant say anything, anywhere, anytime, until working with marginalized communities changed their view of speech and power. We also worked with a former athlete who thought discipline was about pushing through until an injury forced them to redefine resilience. We also worked with a poli-sci major who thought policy was the answer to everything until they worked with individuals affected by the policy and saw the human side. Now, none of these are huge stories, they're not dramatic, but they show thought and a willingness to reflect. Now, you can't reverse engineer this structure by inserting fake revelations. If your essay sounds like, at first I thought injustice was bad, but then I realized it's really bad, that's not growth, that's filler, and it's not fooling anybody. You need to actually show a shift, even a small one, a change in how you think, not just what you think. Bottom line, law school is about thinking, and the intellectual autobiography essay is your chance to show, not tell, that you're built for this. It's thoughtful, it's humble, it's real, and right now, that's what wins. Now let's talk about applicants applying from outside the US. And this part's not going to be sugar-coated because you deserve the truth. This cycle is harder for international applicants. Now, harder doesn't mean impossible, but visa issues are more complicated, job placements more competitive, and schools are under pressure to justify every offer, especially to students who might not stay in the US long term. So some schools are quietly pulling back on international admits, not because of your abilities, but because of the logistics. So what do? You can't argue with the system, you've just got to adapt. Now, admissions is not going to ask, is this person smart enough for law school? They're asking, can this person thrive in a US classroom? Will they integrate well with our culture, professors, and student body? Will they actually use this degree in a meaningful way, or will they just bounce after 1L? They're trying to de-risk the decision. So your job is to make it easy for them. If you're applying internationally, here's what gives you an edge. First, proof that you've adapted to the US or Western-style academics or work. That could look like studying abroad, attending an English language university, working at a global company, taking classes from US institutions, and having strong letters from recommenders who know the US system. Your job here is not just to show your language skills, but to show cultural fluency, that you can handle the Socratic method in the classroom, that you can handle networking events, cold calls, and everything else that makes American legal education unique. You also want to have a career plan that makes sense and sounds real. Too many international applicants will say, I want to work at a big US law firm and then bring justice to my home country. Okay, but how? What kind of firm? What kind of law? How are you going to get sponsorship? And how will your US degree be recognized at home? How does it tie into your background? This is the part where we see a lot of international applicants go vague, and that is the kiss of death. That is your auto-deny. And so, when we work with international applicants, we help them craft career narratives that sound credible, not just aspirational, because wishful thinking won't get you a visa or an admit. Now, here's the one thing international students often overlook. You bring a perspective most domestic applicants don't. Whether it's a different legal system, a unique lived experience, or insight into how law intersects with culture in your country, use that. But ground it and make it real. Tie it into your goals. You're not writing a tourism brochure here, but you do want to show how your international background makes you an asset to the classroom, not a wild card. And whether you're an international applicant or not, remember that your LSAT is your number one lever. If it's not strong, fix it before touching the rest of your app. Your application needs to be skimmable, not clever. Clarity beats creativity every single time. Your application essays need to be personal, not performative. Law schools want thinkers, not keyboard activists. And you need to know where you stand. No magical thinking, just brutal honesty and smart execution. Because the old playbook of getting a good score, writing a decent essay, and submitting on time just isn't enough anymore. You've got to think strategically, communicate clearly, and remove every single reason for someone to say no. That's how you win this cycle. And if you're not doing that, you're wasting your shot. That's it.